On the 23rd of June this year, Luke Morley releases his new solo album, Songs from the Blue Room, some 8,169 days after his first, El Gringo Retro, was released in Japan. I've been lucky enough to hear it, and it's another shining example of Ryan Roxie's ability to predict the future when he said in episode 1 of Metal Talk TV, there will be some amazing music released after the pandemic has eased. I'm delighted to welcome Luke to Metal Talk to chat about the Blue Room project. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, good. Congratulations on the album. How is writing a solo album different from writing for Thunder?
Well, I think the main difference is really, I think probably, obviously, vocally, I'm not writing for Danny. I'm writing for myself. So that's one aspect of it. I think also that people have expectations of Thunder and see Thunder as being very much a rock and roll band, rock band, hard rock band, metal band, call it what you will. And I think the joy of being able to make a solo album is that I can go anywhere I want because people don't have any preconceptions musically about what it's going to be. And if they do, then it's not something that I would worry about because I think, the whole point of it is not to make a record like a Thunder record because that's what I do in my day job. So this for me is kind of like, sort of doing something that's different and, maybe getting a few of those things out of my system that Thunder maybe I can't do with Thunder or don't feel is appropriate for Thunder.
There's a distinct charm to your voice across songs from Blue Room. And with the exception of drums, this is all you, production as well. How does it feel to be sharing your soul to this extent?
Well, crikey, I hadn't thought about it like that. For me, mate, I've just written a bunch of songs. I don't know. I think if you're in any kind of creative endeavor, whether if you write books, you make music, you make film, whatever you do, I think you're always, to use your phrase, sharing your soul to a certain extent. And I think there's no point doing it if you don't. And I think maybe all of us as creative people have some kind of genetic issue or problem that makes us crave approval from lots of other people at the same time. I don't know. I don't want to analyse that too far. Otherwise, I'll drive myself a bit more mad or madder. So, for me, it's just really it's an interesting exercise because I mean, it was brought on as you said earlier by the pandemic to an extent in that I couldn't physically collaborate with anybody. So, I just kind of had to kind of get on with it. And once I got into the process of doing it, I started to quite enjoy it because it was it's a very very different process than. Obviously with the band, I know I write the songs for the band, but obviously I want them to, to enjoy the songs and improve the songs and be comfortable in them. But obviously this time I've got nobody to answer to but myself. Having said that, I think myself a serious talking to a couple of times.
I Want to See the Light is the first track on the album. You sing "Get Me Out of This Cold Dark Place." Yeah, that's the lockdown loneliness feelings raising their head.
Yes, it didn't. Yeah, yes, it didn't, just not. You don't got a bit of rocket scientist to work this one out. Yeah, very much so. It's very much about you being sort of feeling slightly isolated and missing your mates and not being able to go out and be spontaneous. That's a massive part of being alive. And it was odd. I mean, to be honest with you, it wasn't too bad for me because myself and my wife enjoyed ourselves. We listened to a lot of music, watched a lot of films, sat in the garden drinking wine too often, probably, but we tried to sort of, we went out for lots of walks and stuff, and it was kind of good because she's very busy a lot of the time, as am I. So it was good to sort of hang out for a while together. And I imagine it didn't go that well for some people.
Well, it was really great weather first time round. So me and my wife we rediscovered our love of wine in the garden. So, but that's a really cool song. I love the kind of major minor chord interchanges, and when you listen through the headphones. The way you kind of layer the different guitar parts in the mix is really, really cool. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
When you're putting these tracks together in the studio, you're layering your different guitars. Do you have the big picture in your mind at the start, or is this something that grows organically through the process?
Yeah, kind of. It's a mixture of both, really. I mean, I wanted this particular song, to sound, So she was driven by the acoustic guitar, but I wanted to kind of move electrics kind of in and out a little bit. So, as you say, multi-layered, and there's some odd droning parts going on that maybe aren't very obvious, but they're kind of there in the background that help add to the atmosphere.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, it's something that, you know, I always have a rough idea. It's a bit like painting, you know, you start with the background and you do the foreground last. And it's kind of, I guess I put tracks together that way, you know, and this is a good example of that. You know, you kind of layer up and go, oh, maybe that's working, maybe that's not working. And you always make sure you leave room for the vocal and whatever the vocal's doing. And, you know, I just always work that way. I mean, I think you have to be aware of everything all the time. That's what production is, really.
Yep. The first single, Killed by Cobain. That's a lovely slice of Americana that kind of brings to the mind the traveling Wilburys at their finest, maybe. We spoke to David Reese of Bangor Choir, who released their debut album in the States the same week as Nirvana released their famous one. And kind of two weeks later, his American record company basically tore up the contract and told them to get day jobs. Obviously, Thunder's an English band. How was grunge this side of the pond?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, I mean, it did impact on us in America as well, massively. You know, and we weren't starting from scratch. You know, at that point, we had we'd sold 250,000 albums, and we had an album in the top 60 in America. So, you know, a single in the top 60 as well. And the video for Dirty Love was all over MTV like a rash. So, you know, our profile wasn't low exactly. But still, what you're describing happened to your friend, that happened to us. You know, pretty much Geffen, which was our label, suddenly just completely pulled all their resources away from the more traditional rock acts. And they actually bought Sub Pop, the Seattle label, quite a few of those bands as well, and all the resources went that way. And you know, just to add to that, a lot of the American rock radio formats changed virtually overnight. So yeah, we found ourselves in a weird position where we were supposed to go out and tour with David Lee Roth and Cinderella. There's sheds all around the country, and the tickets didn't sell. And over there, it was very seismic. It was it's a bit like punk rock here in '75. I don't think it really translated really grunge here as much. I don't think people were that kind of. I think over here people thought, well, it's just more rock bands, except they've got, you know, more plaid shirts and more tattoos, and they've got goatees, and in fact, from a fashion point of view, it was slightly different, I guess.
Yeah.
And they got away from the big hair and all of that sort of stuff, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But I don't think it had quite the impact that it had in America, to be frank.
No. I mean, I remember back in the day in the pub when you were playing pool, you'd have a few Nirvana songs on there, but you'd still have plenty of Thunder and other rock bands as well. Errol Flynn. So it was Gene Autry who said of Errol Flynn, he spent more time on a bar stool or in court or in the headlines or in bed than anyone I know. I guess you've read that, and this must be one of those weird things that can that can generate a bout of songwriting in your mind.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I did know that about Errol Flynn. I sort of read, you know, various things about that period in history of Hollywood that I find quite fascinating. You know, and I read David Niven's books, and David Niven and him shared a flat for a while. God knows what that was like. But yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of using Errol as a metaphor, really, I think, for all men.
Right.
You know, and as men, we get to a certain age, and we realise that, you know, whereas women used to look at us, now they look through us. That's kind of what happens. So it's a bit of that, and it's a bit of coming to terms with the fact that you're getting old, and you know, those of us who are lucky enough to experience that have to deal with it. Obviously, not everybody does get the opportunity to get old, and we should always remember that it's a privilege not granted to everybody. So it's kind of it's that really. It's looking at that, and you know, you kind of. It's a guy kind of looking at his younger self, I suppose, and you know, saying, "All right, son, you know, it's time to kind of get off your bar stool and you know, retire gracefully from everything in a kind of in that sort of way." I suppose it takes Errol Flynn, uses Errol as a metaphor, because obviously he's probably about the most famous shagger in all history. I think. Shagger and party. So you know, all of those things. That he spent his whole life doing that destroyed him in the end. you know, I suppose it's a bit of all of those things are going on in there. It's also maybe a little bit about my father, who died, passed away 2 years ago, and he you know, he had he lived a full life, my old man. Let's just leave it there. So it's kind of maybe a little bit about him as well.
Oh no, sorry. Damage is the first song on the album where the piano's at the fore. Is piano something that comes to you naturally, or you have to work hard at it?
Well, piano, obviously, I'm a guitar player, so I can do pretty much what I want on the guitar. So I sit at the piano, and all it represents to me is a load of frustration because I can see everything, I know where everything is, but my hands won't bloody go there. My dexterity is not fabulous. Having said that, I've got a lot better the last few years, and I use it. It's something that I use as a tool for writing frequently, and most of the time it will get transposed onto guitar. But occasionally, I think if something kind of sounds great on the piano, it will stay there, and that's obviously the case with Damage. It's built all around the piano part, which is the same.
Nobody Cares is great. Again, there's some wonderful atmospheric piano in there. It's the 5-minute epic of the album. I love the way it builds. Yeah, the bass comes in and then mandolin later. Is there a plan to play any of this live? Because there's an obvious crowd participation point in that song.
Yeah, well, I think I'm actually talking about that at the moment to various people about the possibility of going out maybe later this year, do some shows.
Cool.
I don't want to do it if I can't do it properly. That's the thing. So I want to make sure the right musicians are available and you know, it's the right kind of venues and everything's right about it, because I'm too old to do it badly, and I have no desire to do it if I can't do it the way I want to do it. And seeing as the album is kind of a sort of side project anyway, initially I was thinking I won't bother doing any gigs. And now what's happened is now the kind of news is out that the album's coming and people have heard the first track. It's like, well, when are you touring? It's like, well, I'm not, I don't know. So I thought, well, I better have a look at it. So I'm looking at it. Yes, I think this will work good live. Will work well live. I think a lot of the tunes will work quite well because I think they're essentially quite simple songs. Funnily enough, Nobody Cares isn't simple. It's an odd. It's in waltz time, which is always odd anyway, and it has a bizarre key change, and then a modulation and a demodulation, which doesn't happen very often. I must have been on drugs that day, and I have no idea where the melody da 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 da. I have no idea where that came from. Right out of left field.
There's some wonderful humour in that song too. You know, kind of after about the third or fourth listen, yeah, you've got the la la sections, haven't you? You've got the key change you mentioned with the acoustic guitar solo. That's kind of like happy, like, you know. But then it's split by the verses where you're just having a bloody good old moan, aren't you?
Exactly. Yes. Well, it's just lyrically it's about the mundanity of most of what people put up on Facebook or social media. Yeah. Like, you know, here's a photograph of my dinner, that kind of thing, you know. Because I think, you know, there's enough bloody mundanity in my own life. I don't need other people's as well. So that's kind of really what the song is saying. It's just, for God's sake, you haven't got to share everything that's going through your brain. You really don't, you know. And so it's just me moaning as usual.
But there's some really good vocals in there, and you really push your voice at points.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously I'm very lucky. I've worked with some amazingly talented singers over the years, and Danny. I mean, Jesus Christ, he's got one of the great English blues rock voices. He has, he's a pure tenor. I mean, he would have been, if he'd have been born 200 years ago, he'd have been a fantastic opera singer. I mean, he can do anything. It's amazing. And, you know, obviously because of that, and then subsequently working with the other people I worked with, like Peter Shoulder, who I did the Union with, and a couple of years on and off working with Robert Palmer in Power Station. I worked with some amazing singers. So singing was not really something I had to think about particularly. Obviously, I make demos at home all the time, and when I'm writing thunder songs, I'll sing them all, you know, as best I can. A lot of the time, that's it, because Danny's a pure tenor, which is way higher than me. I'm much more in a baritone kind of range. So one of the nice things about this album is I was actually singing songs that I could actually hit the notes, and that really helped. And I think, you know, it's not something me being a singer isn't something I've explored massively, to be honest. So that was, you know, a good exercise about this album, as I had to get into that and think about that a lot more. And singing, obviously, even I think about singing a lot, even if it's Danny and what he's singing, because, you know, as a producer of the Thunder Records, part of my job is to make sure that everybody's doing the best they can, and their interpretation of the song is the best it can be. And obviously, so I think a lot about Danny's vocal parts and what he's singing. You know, it's something that's part of the construction of the song to me. It's crucial. So I'm analysing singing all the time, even if I'm not doing it. And then obviously, but this album, I'm actually having to do it. So it's yeah, slightly different, but good. It's a good challenge to, you know, to give yourself when you're kind of 60 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go through every song. Watch the Sun Go Down is cool. That would make a good second single.
Yes, very yes, that probably will. Yes, yeah.
All right. Okay. Yep.
I'm not supposed to say anything, but yes, you're quite right. It would make a good single.
It would make a good single, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Lying to Myself. Yeah, you're on the harmonica there as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm, you know, a harmonica is another one of those instruments I play badly, but just about enough to get away with it. I mean, it's funny instrument, the harmonica, because there's lots and lots of people who play it okay.
Yeah,
I'm just another one of them. You know, whether it's me, whether it's you know, John Lennon was a very okay harmonica player. You know, and then you have people like Stevie Wonder who can really bloody play it. Who my brain can't. I don't even understand what he's doing on harmonica. It's so complex. But yeah, for just kind of knocking out a tune and giving a flavour of something. I mean, Dylan's another one who you know, who'll never go down as the greatest harmonica player in the world, but what he did, it complemented his acoustic guitar, and the combination of the two is kind of timeless for me. So it's nice to be able to do that. And yeah, I like the sound of harmonica. It's not the most popular instrument, and it's not used that often these days. But no, I always enjoy it.
No, it does have a place, and you certainly found one there. I'm the One You Want. That's kind of the most Thunder song on the album. There's some really cool bass on there in unison with the guitar in parts too. Yeah, you're a fan of bass, obviously.
I love playing the bass. I mean, I really enjoy it. It's to me, it's the most underused instrument in rock, particularly because it's so easy to do this in, you know, the obvious thing. But I think if you know, I mean, my favourite bass players are James Jamerson, John Paul Jones, John Entwistle, Paul McCartney, and all of those.
Yep.
There's always something going on. There's always a counter melody or something rhythmic or something interesting. So you always notice the bass on records, but not to the detriment of the song. And to me, that's the thing, is that it can be a wonderfully melodic instrument, the bass, and very powerful. And it's the sort of instrument people tend not to notice it until it stops, and then they go, "Hang on a minute, there's something missing here." It is a very, very important thing, and I always love. That's the thing I love about having a home studio, is I can really take my time and try and find something interesting for the bass to be doing. Although on this particular song, like I said, on that particular section you're talking about, is just doubling the guitar. Yeah, but that's normally you don't hear bass parts aren't that quick normally. No. But it's quite an interesting thing to do it with the guitars, and just good fun.
Yeah, it's wonderfully widdly enough. Yeah, the doubling the guitar part. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Sure, liked it. The album finishes on the beautiful and upbeat in mood. Don't Be Long. It's kind of poignant song, really. I really love the way that you've presented the album in the order that you have across the 10 songs. I mean, I think the way a lot of people listen to music these days, they really miss out on the beauty behind the journey of an album. Of songs presented in a certain order. That's obviously something you agree with.
Completely. I think it's a generational thing, isn't it? Really. I mean, I find it really worrying if I hear, because I grew up listening to the Beatles, and if I hear a Beatles album or if I hear Beatles songs out of context in the wrong order, it makes me feel quite uncomfortable. Right. Yeah. Right. But yeah, the sequence was important, and across an album, I do believe it is very important. And if you get it wrong, you know, people can lose their way listening to it. And I think these days, though, young people listen to music very differently. Their attention span is, I think, a lot shorter, and they're less patient. They don't. I think my generation if we bought a record by an artist that we liked, or that we, that we kind of believed in, and then we heard their album initially, we didn't like it, we would persevere with it for a little bit.
Yes.
And just kind of go, and eventually it would kind of reveal itself.
Yep.
I maybe young people aren't really like that so much anymore. I think there's very much kind of, I don't like that next. I'm probably doing all young people a disservice, because I'm sure they're not all like that, but I think we live in a very, very fast world where there's not much time for dwelling on things, and there's so much being thrust into your face that to try and take everything in is, it's impossible. It's all moving so quickly.
It's a nightmare. There's so much out there. I mean, Mrs. Ritchie is one for, if I play something in the kitchen, yeah, she's, she can make a judgment after about 40 seconds, and that's totally alien to me. Yeah, if you kind of like listen to it maybe a second time, a third time, yeah, and then you start to kind of pick up bits on it. Yeah, it's a real shame, and there is loads of stuff coming out.
One of my favourite bands is Steely Dan.
Right.
The first time I heard Steely Dan, I could still remember where I was. I was sitting in a field. I was sitting at Reading Festival in 1975. John Peel was the DJ, and he played "Do It Again," and I just stopped what I was doing completely. It was a real moment for me. So I've never heard anything that kind of cool and laid back and interesting and weird. But then when I bought the album, I just thought, it was quite kind of obtuse, and difficult. But I still, to this day, listen to Steely Dan at least once a week.
Right.
And it's the sort of music, once again, it doesn't reveal itself to you at first. You have to put some effort into understanding what's going on. And but it's worth it. You get much more out of it in the end.
Yeah, it's effort and reward, isn't it? So Songs from Blue Rooms out 23rd of June. I mean, you mentioned kind of preconceived ideas. I certainly didn't have one. But it's one that I really enjoyed listening to. You should be very proud of it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm pleased with it. I'm very pleased with it. It's a funny thing. People. I've been asked a couple of times over the past couple of weeks. Do you still get excited when you put something new out? And very much so. Yeah, I mean, because there's always that kind of worry that people aren't going to like it, or people are going to go, "Oh, this is awful." I suppose it's there's always that kind of slight worry. But so far, touch wood, certainly the reaction to the first track's been very, very good, and people like yourself who've heard the album have all been very positive. So so far so good. I mustn't complain. Great.
Any message for the fans?
I just, as far as Songs from the Blue Room's concerned, I really hope you enjoy it, and it floats your boat. And just a massive thank you to everybody that helped us out with Danny's situation, and just to say that he's recovering and he's doing really, really well. I don't think with Thunder will do much this year, but I think next year it's definitely a possibility. And I just want to pass that on from him as well, just to say thank you so much.
Cool. Luke, thanks so much for your time. I wish you the very best with this, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing it live. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, if that happens, of course.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. Cheers.
Take care now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.